It's interesting to note, if you look at the landscape of the conference, that Oklahoma, of course, took over in 2015. They won 6 consecutive conference championships before last season. And in all of those, Baylor and TCU were obviously extremely strong in 2014, vied for a playoff spot. And then Oklahoma takes over in 2015. TCU and Baylor fall off. Of course, Baylor they have a roller coaster ride going over the last 10 years, like pretty much nobody in college football, everything from the brink of the playoff to 1-11 and back and forth. But that the narrative going into the season has been Oklahoma's rock solid. They are the prohibitive favorite. And then the second narrative is Texas going to wake up and challenge them? And everybody else kind of gets dismissed. Maybe Oklahoma State's a dark horse mentioned by a few people, but that's pretty much been the last 6 to 7 years it's Oklahoma. They are the odds-on favorite. And is Texas going to challenge them? Are they going to finally live up to their talent? Now, coming into this season, I'll just take my cue from the Vegas over-under odds. Pretty much have Oklahoma, Baylor, Oklahoma State running a neck and neck and neck run for the conference championship.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of it is, and from the outside looking in, it's warranted. You bring in a completely new staff on both sides of the ball, new head coach, and I think there's a assumption that there's going to be a little bit of a drop off, and you take that on top of the transfers that left this program, some of the kids on defense that left the program and went to the next level. And so I think there's a certain degree, specifically when you're relying on some transfers and key positions to pull that in. But I think, as you mentioned, there's a lot of, when you look at Baylor, I think he's one. When you look at Baylor specifically, Dave Aranda has done an excellent job over the last couple of years and really turning that program around, particularly last year. And then, but to that point that you had made, do they have the staying power to be there, year in and year out? They've got a lot of holes to fill on the defensive side of the ball as well. And when you look at Oklahoma State, very, very similar to the issue with Baylor in terms of just having a lot of holes to fill on the defensive side of the ball. And then again, I know that we kind of, when we talk about the Big 12 overall, we've said this a lot, that how much are you going to be able to trust Spencer Sanders for an entire season, as the Oklahoma State quarterback to win you a championship. And then you look at Texas. I mean, as we've mentioned about Texas, is when are they going to step up and be the team? And obviously, it doesn't always come back to quarterback, but I think more times than not, if you have a really, really good quarterback, then you're going to, whether or not you always have the other pieces. If you have a good quarterback, you're going to be at least in contention for a Big 12 championship. And and the thought of bringing in a kid playing in his first year in yours, I think that's a little bit probably concerning. So I think what's interesting this year, Mark, is you have a lot of these teams that have major question marks. So it's maybe not, I won't say it's not as talented, but it's maybe not as perceived as strong as maybe it's been in the past, at least in the top half.
28 AD 28 makes an interesting point right here. He is pretty sure, and I'm pretty sure as well. I'm not going to say this as a 100% certainty, but there's only a few programs you could go to hold up this statement. And I'm going to the most obvious one. If you've followed college football for the last 20 years, and it's not Alabama, it's Ohio State. But they had a 6-win season in the year 2011 because that was the Luke Fickell year, interim coach. They went 6-6, 6-7 with a bowl loss. So this is pretty impressive. And I know that Oklahoma takes a hit nationally for losing some big games on the big stage over the past 15 years or so. But the lone Power 5 team to win at least 8 games every year since 2000. Yeah, I'm doing a quick scan, and they have to be it. That has to be it, because Ohio State would be the only other team that would have accomplished that, and they did not in 2011. So that's pretty remarkable. 2 decades of consistency and at least going 8-4, and we know that just about every year has been way above 8-4.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Mark, and that's the model of consistency that this program has had. To your point, and um, to the comment here as well, since 2000. And I think, you've got some people that make, some outlandish comments, and I think there's some people that think that this team could drop um, below 8 wins. And I mean, nothing's impossible, but with the schedule that Oklahoma has, it's hard to see that this team, even if some of the transfers and some of the team does not play up to their capabilities, seeing more than 4 losses on the schedule. And I think it's one of those things where Oklahoma's got. I mean, they still have great players, right? They still have. I mean, you can make an argument, and I would make the argument that Oklahoma, at the very least, on the defensive side of the ball, they have better coaches than they have in quite some time. I think when you look at Jeff Lebby versus Riley, I mean, they're different. I think, I don't know that I would necessarily sit here and say Levy's a better coach, but I think it's at the at, at the least a wash, right? When you look at how, because I think Levy is considered, for most, as one of the best, if not the best, play caller, offensive coordinator in the country. And you got a lot of those same coaches on staff that has been there, for a while. Then you infuse, someone with the energy of Venables, and you bring in a very key component from a strength and conditioning perspective with Jerry Schmidt, and then the defensive coaching that we've talked about. I think, this you'll see a different team. I mean, no matter what the wins and losses look like, I think you're going to see a much different team on the field, this year than you have in years past. But the talent is there. Maybe they probably don't have national championship talent, right? But not yet. But I think this is a team. There's some. It's you see this from time to time, but there's I've seen predictions where I've seen anywhere from 7-5, from 7-5 to 13-0. So I mean, I tend to fall somewhere obviously in between those two. But I don't think this is a team that. But you could be surprising. I don't know that this is a team at this point on June 17th that I would say, would go undefeated and has a playoff spot. But if this is a team that has a loss, or maybe two, but probably just one loss, and they win the Big 12, then they certainly could backdoor back into that college football playoff. But, yeah, there's a lot of varying opinions on what this team will look like, and I think that's kind of typical, right, for a new regime coming in.